I want to start with a bit of a confession.
Uh-huh.
When I say the words marketing department, part of my brain, the part that's definitely watched too much TV, still goes straight to that, that Mad Men.
The glass offices, the scotch at 11 a.m.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The high-stakes pitch meeting where someone just saves the company with a brilliant tagline and then, credits roll.
It's a very stubborn image.
Yeah.
It's romantic, it's glamorous, and if you've actually worked in the industry, you know it is about as accurate as a cartoon.
Right. I think most of us know the reality is less scotch and sofas and much more slacks and spreadsheets.
Yeah, for sure.
But today, we're going even deeper than just, debunking the glamour. We are looking at a very specific role that seems to exist entirely to keep that chaos from just consuming the company. We're talking about the marketing officer.
The entry-level grunt work, or so it seems.
That is the perception.
Yeah.
But we are pulling apart a really fascinating, and I have to say, slightly traumatic and very funny source today called The Marketing Officer's Survival Guide. It's from the Faroohz blog, and it's written by Farah Majali Rawashday.
And Farah isn't writing this from a textbook or something. She's bringing, 13 years of experience to this? She has been in the trenches.
She really has. The whole vibe of this blog post isn't, here are 5 tips for success. It's much more like a weary war veteran handing you a helmet and just saying, good luck, kid, try not to get blown up.
It's definitely a baptism by fire manual.
Yeah.
What struck me right away is how she completely reframes the purpose of this role. We usually think of the officer as, the person who just does what they're told.
The bottom of the ladder.
Right. But Farah argues that the officer is actually the structural integrity of the entire department.
That is a big claim for the person at the bottom of the org chart.
It is. But her argument is that without this specific person, the strategy doesn't just fail it evaporates. It becomes a wish.
So our mission today is to figure out why. We're going to decode what she calls the paperwork jungle, which is a delightful term.
I love that.
We're going to look at the big 3 survival skills she says are absolutely non-negotiable. And then we're going to get into a section that I found honestly a little triggering. She calls it officer trauma and the skill gap.
Oh, that skill gap section is going to hurt some feelings, but it really needs to be discussed.
Oh, absolutely. But let's start with the identity crisis. So Farah opens by just shutting down the idea that marketing is about making things look pretty.
Mm-hmm.
She basically says, if you think you're here to pick color palettes, get out. So if they aren't the pretty makers, what are they?
She calls them paperwork ninjas.
Which is infinitely cooler than marketing officer. I'll take that title.
It sounds cool, but the context is pure chaos.
Mm.
She breaks this ninja identity down into 2 very specific functions. You have the external email guru and the internal task shuffler.
Okay, can we pause on external email guru? Because that sounds a little bit like resume speak for I know how to hit reply all. Is it really a skill?
It's so easy to dismiss, isn't it? But think about the whole ecosystem. A marketing department, it isn't an island. You have ad agencies, PR firms, print shops, event coordinators. You've got a dozen external partners.
Sure.
The officer is the single point of contact, the conduit for all of that traffic.
So they're the bottleneck.
They're the filter. Imagine this. The director has a vague idea for a campaign. They just shout it out in a meeting.
Yeah.
If the officer just transcribes that vague shouting and emails it to the ad agency, you get a disaster.
Right.
You get a billboard that makes no sense or a digital ad that links to a broken page. Being a guru here means translating that internal corporate speak into, clear instructions for the agency and vice versa.
So if the agency screws up, it might be because the officer didn't translate the instructions properly?
Often, yeah. Farah points out that if that email chain breaks, or if the tone is wrong, or the specs are off by just an inch, the company loses money. It's high-stakes communication disguised as just sending an email.
Then you have the internal task shuffler. This sounds like the very definition of busy work. Like, I take a paper from this pile and I put it in that pile.
It feels like busy work until you realize it's actually air traffic control. You have requests flying in from sales, from product, from the C-suite. We need a brochure. Update the website. Where is the Q3 report?
Yeah.
If those requests just land on everyone's desk at random, the creative team, they just crash. They can't work.
Right, because the designer's getting tapped on the shoulder every 5 minutes.
Precisely. The shuffler intercepts those missiles. They decide what's a priority, who needs to see it, and when it's due. They protect the team's time.
Okay.
Farah uses this metaphor of the paperwork jungle for a reason. It's overgrown, it's messy, and it's dangerous. The officer is the one hacking through the vines so everyone else can actually walk.
I really like that image.
Oh.
So the director is up there looking at the stars, trying to navigate the ship, and the officer is down below just trying to make sure no one steps in quicksand.
That is exactly the dynamic. And to survive that quicksand, Farah outlines her big three. These are the pillars of survival. And she's very strict here. She says these are the basics, and if you don't have them, the entire operation collapses.
Let's break these down because they sound deceptively simple. Pillar number 1 is communication and delegation. Now, I have to challenge this. We're talking about an entry-level role.
Yeah.
How does an officer delegate? You don't tell your boss what to do.
No.
You don't tell the agency what to do. I mean, they're the experts, right?
That's the paradox of the role. You have zero formal authority, but you have total responsibility for the workflow.
Yeah.
Delegation here isn't about bossing people around. It's about routing.
Routing. Explain that.
Okay. Say a massive project lands on the officer's desk.
Yeah.
Launch the fall campaign. That's way too big to do.
Yeah, that's not a task.
Exactly. The officer has to break that boulder into pebbles. They have to tell the copywriter, I need text by Tuesday. They have to tell the manager, I need you to approve the budget by Wednesday. They have to tell the agency, I need the assets by Friday.
So they are managing up, down, and sideways, all at once.
Constantly. And if they're passive, if they're too afraid to delegate to their boss and say, hey, I can't move forward until you sign this, then the project just dies. Farah emphasizes that this communication has to be active. It's not just passing messages, it's driving action.
It's funny because in a lot of corporate cultures, speaking up like that as a junior person is, it's discouraged. But she's saying it's the only way to survive.
It's the only way the company survives.
Which brings us to pillar 2. And I feel like I can hear the collective groan of our listeners already. Minutes taking.
The most hated task in the entire corporate world.
And it's viewed as a punishment, right? You're the new guy, you take the notes. But Farah treats this like it's a superpower. She calls it translating meeting chaos into actionable documentation. Why is she placing so much weight on a Word doc?
Because she understands the psychology of meetings. Think about the last creative meeting you were in. People interrupt each other.
Oh, yeah.
The director changes their mind 3 times in 10 minutes. Someone makes a joke that kind of sounds like a strategy. It's just noise.
It is a mess. And usually you walk out thinking, wait, what did we actually decide to do?
Exactly. And that is the danger zone. If the officer just writes down what was said, they're a stenographer. It's useless. The survival skill is to filter the noise. They have to listen to 40 minutes of arguing and distill it into the decision is X, the deadline is Y, the owner is Z.
So they're basically rewriting history, or at least codifying it.
They are creating the source of truth. And here is why it's a weapon and not just administrative work. It prevents gaslighting.
Ah, I never said that.
The amount of times a manager or a client will come back 2 weeks later and say, I never approved that budget, or I told you to make the logo blue, not red. If you don't have the minutes, it's your word against theirs, and you will lose.
Because you're the officer.
Right. But if the officer could just pull up the document and say, actually, per the minutes sent on February 7th at 2 p.m., which you didn't dispute, you proved the red logo.
Oh, that's powerful.
It shuts down the chaos. It holds people accountable to their own words.
So the minutes are actually a shield?
A shield and a sword. It's the only way to enforce accountability in a really fluid, creative environment.
I will never look at a meeting summary the same way again. It's basically a legal defense.
It absolutely is.
Okay, pillar 3, documentation palooza. I love that she tries to make spreadsheets sound like a music festival.
Palooza is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that phrase.
It really is. But she's talking about sheets and trackers and presentations. And this connects to a really spicy argument she makes about basic skills. She basically implies that if you can't build a functional spreadsheet, you are a liability.
Well, it goes back to the jungle metaphor. You can't navigate the jungle without a map. In marketing, the data is the map. Budget trackers, campaign timelines, conversion metrics.
Right.
Farah's point is that the vision is invisible. The plan is abstract. The documentation is the only thing that makes it real.
Rendering the invisible visible.
Yes. If the officer can't take the messy reality of a campaign and put it into a clean, formatted status report, the director is flying blind. They don't know if they're over budget. They don't know if they're behind schedule. The officer's ability to document is what gives the leadership eyes.
It's interesting because we so often value the person who presents the deck, but we totally undervalue the person who built the deck.
And Farah is saying, the person who builds the deck is the one who actually understands the business.
So we have the ninja skills. Communication, minutes, documentation. Now I want to figure out where this ninja actually sits in the ecosystem because Farah outlines this hierarchy, a food chain that I found really clarifying.
It's very useful, especially if you're confused about job titles, which are notoriously messy in marketing.
So true.
She breaks it down into 4 levels: the director, the manager, the executive, and the officer.
Okay, but I have to stop you because executive and officer sound almost interchangeable to me. In some companies, an executive is a C-suite person. In others, it's a junior sales rep. How is she defining these?
That's a crucial distinction. In this specific model, and this is pretty common in British and some Middle Eastern corporate structures, the executive is the doer. They are the soldier on the ground executing the marketing tasks.
Okay.
Writing the copy, setting up the ad sets, talking to customers.
Okay, so the executive is doing the work.
The marketing work.
Mm-hmm.
The officer is doing the logistical work. The executive fires the gun. The officer makes sure the ammo is there.
Got it. Okay, so let's run through the full chain.
At the top, you have the director. Their currency is vision. They see the destination. We need to capture the Gen Z market.
Big picture, clouds and dreams.
Then the manager. They translate that vision into a plan. To capture Gen Z, we will run 3 campaigns on TikTok.
Strategy, the roadmap.
Then the executive. They make it a reality. They film the TikToks. They write the captions.
And the officer?
The officer is the glue. They ensure the executive has the budget code to pay for the ads. They ensure the manager sees the report on how the ads performed. They ensure the director signs the contract for the influencers.
And this leads to my favorite quote in the entire piece. It was a bit of a gut punch, actually. Farah writes, "If your officer can't navigate the paperwork jungle, your strategy isn't a plan, it's a wish."
That line should be framed in every single boardroom. It's just a wish.
It really deconstructs the arrogance of strategy, doesn't it? We love to think that having a great idea is like 90% of the work.
And Farah is saying, no, the idea is 10%. The other 90% is paperwork. You can have a visionary director and a brilliant manager, but if the officer drops the ball on the vendor registration form, the campaign doesn't launch.
It goes nowhere.
The vision is stuck in a PowerPoint presentation forever. It never, ever reaches the real world.
The officer is the bridge between the PowerPoint and the public.
Exactly. And that bridge is built out of those boring things we just talked about.
Yeah.
Minutes, emails, and spreadsheets.
You know, when you frame it like that, it sounds like a noble profession. The unsung hero holding the bridge together. But the blog post takes a darker turn here. We need to talk about officer trauma.
Yeah, the tone shifts from survival guide to war stories pretty quickly here.
She talks about the skill gap, and this is where her sarcasm really cuts deep. She describes a level of frustration that I think a lot of competent people feel but are, afraid to voice.
It's the trauma of being the only person in the room who knows how to use the tools.
She mentions the computer illiteracy of the modern workforce. And this surprised me because we're told that Gen Z are digital natives. We assume everyone under 30 comes out of the womb knowing how to use software. Farah says, false.
It is a massive, massive myth. Being good at Instagram does not mean you are good at Excel. Farah describes this painful reality of dealing with what I call the single-finger typists.
Oh, the sound of the hunt and pack, a tap, tap, tap.
It drives her crazy. She talks about officers or even peers who redefine basic skills. You ask them to organize a data set, and you watch them manually copying and pasting cells one by one because they don't know how to filter or sort.
That is painful. It's like watching someone dig a hole with a spoon when there's a shovel right next to them.
And the trauma comes from that dependency. If you are the documentation palooza person, if you're the ninja, you end up doing everyone else's work because it's faster for you to just do it than to teach them or wait for them to mess it up.
And she mentioned she even had to train the agency.
That was the kicker for me. She talks about training her team, her department, and then having to explain Marketing 101 to the external agency.
People they are paying.
The experts. Imagine hiring a plumber and then having to stand over their shoulder and explain how a wrench works. That is the level of exhaustion she's conveying.
Wow.
It's not just doing your job. It's being the technical support and the marketing professor for everyone around you.
Know your way around a spreadsheet and a sentence. That's her plea.
It's so simple, yet so rare. Data and literacy. If you have those 2 things, you are dangerous. If you don't, you're a burden.
It really highlights that entry level doesn't mean no skills required. It actually requires a very specific, very hard set of technical skills.
I would argue that in the modern paperwork jungle, the entry-level officer needs more technical hard skills than the director. The director needs soft skills, vision, leadership. The officer needs to know how to execute a VO up and format a formal business letter.
And if they don't,
Then the machine eats them.
Right.
Or, as Farah puts it, the strategy stays a wish.
it's a really compelling look at the invisible plumbing of the corporate world. We've gone from the misconception of the glamorous life to the reality of the jungle.
Mhm.
We've identified the big three weapons: communication, which is routing, not chatting minutes; the shield against gaslighting; and documentation, which is making the invisible visible.
And we've established that without the officer, the whole hierarchy just falls apart. The director is just a person in a room having a daydream.
And we vented a little bit about the trauma of the skill gap. I think that was therapeutic for me.
It was, but I think there's a practical takeaway here for anyone listening, whether you are an officer, a director, or somewhere in between.
What's the audit?
I think you need to look at your team tomorrow morning. Look at your current project and ask yourself, who is the ninja?
And if you can't spot them,
If you look around the room and you can't see the person who is capturing the minutes or routing the tasks or maintaining the trackers,
then it's you.
maybe, or more frighteningly, maybe no one is doing it. And if no one is doing it, you aren't actually working. You're just generating noise. You are living in the chaos that Farah describes.
And your strategy is just a wish waiting for someone to write it down.
Exactly. So respect the ninja. And if you are the ninja, maybe ask for a raise or at least
Yeah.
better software.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it. Huge thanks to Farah Manjali Rawashta and the Ferrets blog for this reality check. It's a survival guide that I think a lot of us didn't know we needed.
Absolutely.
That's it for this deep dive. Go check your spam folder, update your trackers, and we'll see you next time.